Well, here's a dramatization of the basic arguments. You violated my exclusive copyright and made like a dozen movies based off my work, so you have to pay me $900 million in damages. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Brain Blaze. As always, I'm your host Simon Wams here, one of my writers, in this case Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Writes me a script. I'm going to read it. Danny's going to edit it. No, he's not. Danny's going to occasionally write us another script. Sam's going to edit it. Use your big brain, facts boy. Let's go. Oh, it's times ghosts appeared in court cases. Well, they never did because ghosts aren't real. No matter how many times I say this, no matter how much I try to put these people off, I'll still get people who occasionally come over to my Twitter and be like, Simon, I know ghosts aren't real, but this one time. And it's like, no!
Oh, shit! A ghost!
Not that one time. That's the one time you need to check the batteries in your carbon monoxide detector. And if you don't have one, get one. Because the reality is most of that stuff, like, I don't know about most, but look, it's not ghosts, so we'll just rule that one out as a as a statement of fact. And then it's like carbon monoxide is like from boilers and stuff, poisons your brain and it makes you hear things. And it's also super common, and it's less common now, and there's less people seeing ghosts than before. So I'm like, yo, get a carbon monoxide detector. It's not very complicated. Moving on.
You have a poison in your mind.
Everybody knows that ghosts aren't real, except of course for the people that believe they are real. Clowns. Clown face. Whether they're real or not, and they aren't, it would seem that there's any place for ghosts in legal proceedings. Since the existence of ghosts is a matter of unprovable belief, a court is no more likely to rule on their existence than they are to rule on the existence of God. The court's time is better spent ruling on things that they can prove are real, like all the time they spend executing people who are definitely witches and werewolves. Yeah, I know. Look, obviously the past was the worst, and we have come some way. Like, we really have come some way when you're like, well, at least we don't kill witches anymore. People are like, that's how you're judging humanity, the fact we don't kill witches anymore. And be like, it's pretty good. It's genuinely pretty good that in just a few hundred years, which in like the grand scheme of things is not that long in terms of human existence, we've gone from being like, let's kill the witches, let's burn them, to being like, witches aren't real. And some people will be like, witches are real. It's like, yeah, but not in the legal sense. Not in the sense of anyone who's basing their life in this actual reality. I remember there was like, no story. Let's just move on. We don't want to be here all fucking day. Despite this, ghosts have played a key role in a surprising number of court cases, up to and including giving actual testimony in court, which resulted in a murder conviction. Ah, no. How and why? So, strap on your proton pack, grab your EMF detector, and ignore the fact that I should have tried to time this video to come out on Halloween. Bruh. This is coming out in like December.
Hey there, demons. It's me, your boy.
As we examine some of the most famous court cases involving ghosts, the Ghostbusters ruling. The final decision in the case of Stambovsky and Ackley is known as the Ghostbusters ruling. It is such a famous and unusual case that it is widely taught in American law schools. It all began in 1990 when Stambovsky entered into a contract to purchase Ackley's house in Nyack, New York. This should have been a routine sale, but there was one thing that Ackley neglected to disclose to the buyer. The house was haunted by poltergeists. I've said this before, and I'll say it again, but like, if there's a house and it's haunted, I'll be like, I'll take it, because it's going to be cheaper. They're going to be like, yeah, we had to discount it because there were so many murders. I'll be like, perfect. I'll take that discount, thank you very much. Because you know what's not real? Ghosts. You know what is real? Saving fucking money!
Capitalist pig! Back off, man.
Is money even real, or is it just a social construct? I don't even know, but I got bills to pay. It wasn't until after the contract was signed and the down payment was made that Stambovsky was made aware of the house's reputation. He refused to attend the closing, which caused him to forfeit the down payment, but freed him from the obligation to buy the house. However, he then filed an action for rescission of the contract and requested damages, presumably in the amount of the down payment, for fraudulent misrepresentation. Because they didn't mention there were ghosts. That's insane. Just be like, there aren't ghosts. It's just people, it's just a rumor. It's just a rumor. How could this possibly... This isn't gonna... If this guy gets his money back, I will lose so much faith in not just the justice system, but humanity.
That is a lucid, intelligent, well-thought-out objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Overruled.
At the time, New York followed the policy of caveat emptor. Good! or buyer beware in property law. This meant that, at least at first, the case seemed pretty open and shut. Ackley wasn't obligated to disclose information, and any potential buyer should do a proper inspection of the house before making the purchase. Yes, obviously, come on, send the inspector there. You know what he's not going to find? Any ghosts. Done. Locked down. Caveat emptor, bitch. Indeed, the court's original decision was that Stambovsky was shit out of luck. The case was appealed to the New York Supreme Court. The people who are in the New York Supreme Court, I assume, is a bunch of old judges. I'm sure they've got important shit to do. They're in something called the Supreme Court. They definitely deciding on, is this guy going to be killed by the state? Is this person going to be locked up forever? Does this person deserve to be free? They've got important to do, not decide whether you're going to get your money back on your house because it's haunted by something that's not even fucking real. Christ.
Oh, I'm scared.
And they took a different stance. The house had a reputation of being possessed by poltergeists, one that Stambovsky was unaware of, as he was not local to Nyack. Not only did it have the reputation, but Ackley was fully responsible for it. The family had appeared in the local press talking about the haunting, and Mrs. Ackley even wrote a story about it for Reader's Digest in 1977. I'm sorry, I don't give a fuck. That's your fault. You should have looked this up. You should have gone to the town and asked people if the house is haunted if you care that much. And if you don't care, well, great. Well, what the fuck, man? Stop wasting everyone's time, you jackass. In my opinion, Stambovsky didn't know any of this, and as the Supreme Court pointed out, there's not really any reason to have asked about a potential haunting in an otherwise standard house purchase. Furthermore, the presence of such poltergeist was unlikely to be uncovered by a reasonable person performing a thorough inspection of the property. The court ruled that, having reported the ghost's presence in both a national publication and the local press, defendant is stopped to deny their existence, and as a matter of law, the house is haunted. I can't believe they said that. And then they're like, next case, are we going to give this man who murdered 7 children the lethal injection? And then we're like, man, I'm glad we had that ghost house story this morning. That was way more chill.
Oh, shit!
If you're curious as to why any of this would matter, a house that has a reputation for being haunted is going to have a much lower resale value. Personally, I'm on the same page as Simon, and I would gladly buy a haunted house or a home where people were murdered in it if it meant I was going to get it for pennies on the dollar. Yes. I mean, I feel like the house where people are murdered in it is a lot more weird to me than the house that is haunted, because the people were really murdered in there, whereas haunting never has been, never will be. I don't know, pennies on the dollar, yes, obviously. If I'm going to get it for 10% of the price, sure. If it's 90% of the price and there was a family were murdered there, then I'd be like, nah. 80%? Nah. 70%? Now we're talking. Now I'm going to get interested. I'm going to be like, is there any bloodstain anywhere? No bloodstains? No, nothing. It's okay, yeah, 70%, that's a big deal. 30% is a big saving. You could buy, and this is one of the biggest things you'll ever buy. It's not like you're saving 30% on a block of cheese. It's a house! Since Ackley had created this haunted reputation, and neither the reputation nor the presence of poltergeists would be discernible from an inspection of the house, the court ruled that Ackley was taking unfair advantage and overturned the initial ruling granting Stambovsky contract rescission. Despite it being an extremely important legal case, the justices had a lot of fun when writing their majority opinion. In addition to stating that the house was haunted as a matter of law, they made references to Hamlet and Ghostbusters and included all sorts of ghost-themed wordplay, stating things like, the notion is a hobgoblin, which should be exercised from the body of legal precedents. Again, it's like these people are judges on the Supreme Court and they're still having they're just having a laugh. I kind of like that. I respect that. But I mean, you guys are busy. I'd love to do that. Of course, but I never have time to do fun things like this because I have to actually work. I'm like, aren't you guys busy? Aren't you busy with shit?
I think this is all bullshit.
The dissenting opinion was much less fun, essentially reading, "This is stupid and we can't believe you're going to throw away the doctrine of caveat emptor over f***ing ghosts." I'm with that guy. The other guys. I mean, okay, they love their ghost lore and shit, but you can't just get rid of caveat emptor because of f***ing ghosts!
Frankly, I don't believe in you, so I feel like I'm writing a letter to Santa Claus right now.
Luckily for these two humorless douchebags, New York Supremes, yeah, but they're right, douchebags. They're douchebags who are correct. And it's like, if I'm in court and someone's deciding something, do I want the fun guy who's, wrong, or do I want the douchebag who's right? I'll always be like, hey, douchebag said this. Come on, someone get on side with him. Get on side with that dickhead. Let's go. Luckily for these two humorless douchebags, New York State Supreme Court Justice isn't a lifetime appointment. They're elected positions, so those judges would only have to deal with each other until one of their 14-year terms ended. 14 years. Jesus Christ. What sort of term is that? Did that really say 14 years? That's mad. Not as mad as the fact that the justices are like elected for the Supreme Court ones, get it for life, which is some crack smoking right there, America. And don't get me, like, people will be like, oh, Simon, have you not heard of the House of Lords? They're all like they're appointed by blood and it's for life. And I'm like, yeah, it's fucking insane as well. Fortunately, it's just not that important anymore and no one really gives a shit about it because we have an elected chamber. But what's up with that? And I know they're chosen by the president or something, aren't they? For life. What the fuck? It's so crazy.
So dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb.
Warner Brothers sued over the existence of ghosts. In 1980, author Gerald Brittle published The Demonologist, the definitive biography of paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. It was why have I heard of those people? Shit. I don't like that I've heard of these paranormal investigators. I'm sure it came up in one of my previous videos where I'm making fun of people, but I still don't like it. It was one of several books that he would write about the couple and their unbelievable career. I don't mean unbelievable as in impressive, but unbelievable as in their entire career was total bullshit, in Kevin's opinion, and also my opinion, but not a statement of objective fact. But, I mean, come on.
In a stunning turn of events, a superhero is being sued.
As part of the deal, Brittle obtained an exclusive contract to make any future works related to the stories in his books, and he also held the movie rights to the books after briefly being held by his publisher. When Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema released The Conjuring in 2013 about the Warrens' lives, well, a lawsuit could have been seen as all but inevitable. Why not just be like, yeah, no, they're not the Warrens, they're the Vorens. Just change it up a little bit. I'm sure that's legally fine. Right, but if you're thinking about doing that, definitely ask a lawyer just in case. You know, don't rely on old fact boys advice right there. But that's why they do it, right? They just change the name slightly, or they use that small penis thing where they're like, you know, I feel like Steve. No, it was Michael Crichton. I think he used this. There was some journalist, some reviewer who left him a bad review, so he wrote a whole book. He made this guy the bad guy in one of his books, and then he described him as having a really tiny microscopic penis. And then basically the guy couldn't say that it was modeled on him. Because obviously, he's not like, I don't have a micro penis or something like that. It was really clever and kind of intense.
3 inches. Well, hard.
It's possible that Brittle would have let the whole thing go, but a disgruntled producer of the film who claimed Warner Brothers owed him money helped mastermind the entire lawsuit as a way to use Brittle to get his money back. This unfortunately never went to trial, so it didn't result in any important legal precedent, but had the trial proceeded, it almost certainly would have been an important case. Warner Brothers immediately filed to have the case dismissed, arguing that you can't own the rights to a person's actual life story and that The Conjuring wasn't at all based on The Demonologist or any of Brittle's other works. Yeah, that's a really fair point. It's not like, I make those the channel biographics with like biographies of people. If someone like wrote a biography about Winston Churchill and then was like, you copied my biography of Winston Churchill, it's like, bro, you copied Winston Churchill's life story. You can't it doesn't work like that. Someone's life story is fact. It's not like, I'm with Warner Brothers on this one, I'm sorry. Not that it matters. The first part is absolutely true, hence the multitude of unauthorized biographies that exist. Brilliant. I seem... authorized biography. There are many more unauthorized biographies, right? And if it doesn't say authorized, you just assume it's unauthorized. None of my biographies are authorized. I kind of feel like authorized biographies are going to be worse because if I was like, I want to do an authorized biography about someone who's alive, they'd have input on it, and I'll be like, bro. But if it's unauthorized, then I could talk shit about you. I mean, within the facts, of course. I seem to remember a period in the 90s when it seemed like half of what was on TV were unauthorized biographies. Exactly. I remember this is, yeah, for sure. And on YouTube and stuff as well. I'm halfway responsible for this. Not halfway. I'm a small corner of the internet. But you know what? You get my point. As for the second half of their argument, that was a little less clear. The court rejected the motion to dismiss and a trial date was set. If it actually happened, there is no doubt that this would have been the must-watch event of the century. So how could a copyright lawsuit be so entertaining? Well, here's a dramatization of the basic arguments. You violated my exclusive copyright and made like a dozen movies based off my work, so you have to pay me $900 million in damages. Piss off, you stupid writer. These movies are based on historical facts and you can't copyright historical facts. Writer, the stories can't be historical facts because they're about ghosts. Oh my god, I definitely see. I can't believe I didn't see this coming, of course. Ghosts aren't real, and the Warrens are frauds. If you're going to argue that your movies are true stories, then I dare you to walk into that f***ing courtroom and prove that ghosts are real. This is a f***ing gem of an argument. The whole thing about biographies being based off facts, where the guy who wrote the book is like, nah, I made it up. It's like, nah, I made that shit. I just made it all up. He's like slamming himself totally, but he's also like, I think I could get a massive payday from this, so fucking worth it. And I am riding for this guy now. Fuck yeah. We'll never know if the court would actually have compelled Warner Brothers to attempt to prove the ghosts are real, as Brittle was demanding, but the fear that it may come to that probably helped push them to settle. Whoever this guy's lawyer is a fucking legend. Shit, they made so much money. I don't know. I'm guessing that out-of-court settlement by Warner Brothers and Brittle was substantial and tasty. That and Brittle was getting annoyed with the disgruntled producer trying to increasingly take control of the lawsuit, so he may have been happy accepting a lowball settlement just to get it done with. Oh yeah, and everyone settles everything anyway because it's faster, generally less expensive, and doesn't carry the risk that losing a trial might. Yes, settle as soon as possible. Come on now, let's go. I mean, unless it's like frivolous. It's just easier, isn't it? The ghost that got her killer convicted. When Elva Zona Shue died, Shue died in January of 1897 in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. She was ruled to have died of natural causes, and her official cause of death listed was childbirth. This should have already struck people as suspicious because not only had she only been married for about 3 months. How could that work? No one would ever have sex before marriage. She had only known her husband for about 4 months. I wonder how that could possibly work. A man meeting and immediately marrying a woman who was already 5 months pregnant doesn't seem to mesh with what I know about 1890s culture. It turns out the coroner hadn't really looked at the body. When he arrived at the scene, Zona's husband, Edward, was sobbing over her body inconsolably. Rather than, do his job, the doctor just wrote down a cause of death so as not to disturb the grieving husband. Things got even more suspicious when, contrary to local custom, Edward prepared Zona's body for burial himself. Normally the women of the town would do so, but Edward insisted on doing it and placed his wife in a dress with a particularly stiff high collar. What's he done? What's he done? At the funeral, his behavior remained odd. He hovered over her body at all times, never letting loved ones get a close look at the body. When it was finally time to move her body to its final resting place, because yay America and weird open casket funerals, the people moving Zona noticed that her head seemed a lot more loose than would be expected. Did he chop her fucking head off? What a psycho. Oh my god. Also, I've mentioned it so many times, I don't feel the need to mention it again, but open casket funerals are weird. Kevin's American, and he agrees with me. What do you think, Americans? It is weird. Why do you need to look at your dead relatives? I've never seen my dead relatives. They've always just been, closed away in a box, and you're like, good. I don't need to see that.
The fuck?
Her body was buried, and this case of definitely natural causes was put to rest. Why is her head so loose? For a couple of weeks at least. Obviously, Edward was suspicious as hell and people had noticed, but there was no evidence of foul play, so there wasn't really anything to be done. What were they going to do? Exhume a body without justification to actually perform a proper autopsy? That was obviously out of the question. Only a few weeks after the funeral, Zona's mother Mary began telling people around town that her daughter's ghost was visiting her at night. The ghost told her that she'd been murdered, strangled to death by Edward in a violent rage. Holy shit. Strangled to... Oh, do you think he just broke her neck so it's just a bit wibbly wobbly? I guess he didn't cut her head off. That would be a bit more intense. But Jesus Christ, you got to strangle someone so hard to because strangulation is because there's no blood, right? It's not because you pop their neck. Christ.
What?
After a few days of telling people around town this and letting the word spread, she took a trip to the county's prosecuting attorney. Did the prosecutor believe the ghost story? Probably not. It's believed that Mary didn't even believe in ghosts herself, though she stuck to her official story until she died 20 years later of natural causes. What mattered is that the public sentiment was turning on Edward, and Mary just delivered the prosecutor an excuse to get the police to reopen the investigation. I did an episode on Casual Criminals about some woman who was like, she was like, I know who killed this person because the ghosts came and told me, or like I had a vision. It's like, you didn't have a vision, you just need an excuse for telling the police. And that's totally fine, and I'd encourage it. As deputies interviewed those involved in the case, the doctor admitted that he may not have made a completely thorough examination of the body. That admission was good enough, and the body was exhumed for a proper autopsy. The autopsy revealed that she had been very clearly strangled to death and extremely brutally. I won't go into detail about the extent of the damage, but let's just say that heads don't become loose for no reason, as I've said. Edward sat in jail awaiting trial, and more information about him began coming out. Unbeknownst to the townsfolk, Zona was actually his third wife. The first had divorced him on the grounds of great cruelty. Jesus Christ. And his second wife died under mysterious circumstances, also less than a year after they were married. It's almost like he was a compulsively abusive piece of shit, and he would have been arrested weeks earlier had anyone actually done their jobs. Yes, come on, the past. Get it together. Lazy doctors. Get it together. You got it. You got one job. Go there, be like, what killed him? Dunno. Then fine, but have a crack at it at least.
I don't know. It's a mystery.
Mary was the star witness of the trial, and the prosecution absolutely did not want to bring up the topic of ghosts. She wouldn't have needed otherworldly knowledge to know that Edward was a violent douchebag, and they felt it was best to leave all that supernatural stuff out of the courtroom for fear of discrediting the witness. The defense, on the other hand, wasn't afraid of discrediting the witness at all. They brought up the visits from Zona's ghosts, badgering her repeatedly about the story. The defense wanted to make her seem like some superstitious crackpot who couldn't be trusted. There were just two problems with this tactic. The first is that Zona's neck was very obviously and very severely crushed and broken, which Edward had blatantly tried to cover up. The other is that the past was the worst, so obviously an 1890s jury was going to assume that the testimony of a ghost was genuine and truthful. Really? Even back then, I wouldn't believe in this nonsense. After barely an hour of deliberation, Edward was found guilty and a lynch mob was formed. Sadly, the deputy sheriff disbanded the mob before they reached the jail and even filed charges against 4 organisers of the mob. He probably should have just looked the other way and let the mob do God's work. Yeah, just let it go. Just let it be like, oh no, mob justice. How unfair. West Virginia has since erected a historical marker near Zona's cemetery that reads, interred in nearby cemetery is Zona Hester Shue. Her death in 1897 was presumed natural until a spirit appeared to her mother to describe how she was killed by her husband Edward. Autopsy on the exhumed body verified the apparition's accounts. Edward, found guilty of murder, was sentenced to state prison. Only known case in which testimony from a ghost helped convict a murderer. Jap Heron, a novel written from the Ouija board. There's this weird thing that has happened far more times than it should have, where some hack author writes a book and then claims it was transcribed from a famous dead author using a Ouija board or some other bullshit method. Really? That actually happens? But I've seen those novels. It's like, what's the new James Bond novels written in the style of Ian Fleming or whatever? Just do that. Just be like, it's not Ian Fleming through a Ouija board, is it? Take some credit for yourself. Enjoy it. Come on. In this case, the famous author was Mark Twain, and the hacks were 2 mediums, Emily Grant Hutchins and Lola V. Hayes. Unfortunately for the alleged mediums who published their book in 1917, Mark Twain had only died in 1910. His daughter was very much alive, and she and publisher Harper & Brothers had sole publishing rights to Twain's works. To the author's credit, they did originally approach Harper & Brothers with the book, but the publisher threw them out on their arse, saying that the book was trash and it was unfit for publication, and that it was a pathetic attempt to imitate Twain's style. Undeterred, the 2 women found a new publisher and went ahead with the book. Twain's daughter, Clara Clemens, filed a lawsuit in the US Supreme Court to stop the publication of the book and to prevent these charlatans from profiting off their father's name. Excellent, as they f***ing should. The court refused to hear the case on the basis that Clara couldn't prove the book wasn't actually dictated by her father's ghost. What? Well, just be like, you can't publish it under his name. It's my dad's name, and you can't do that. Doesn't matter if it's written by a ghost or not, because it's not, right? This is insane, courts. What the fuck?
You have to promise never to tell anybody about Ghost Rider. He's a ghost, and he writes to us. Ghost Rider.
A simple reading of the text should have made it clear that it wasn't the work of Twain, but the court had made their decision. Unfortunately for Hutchins and Hayes, this was only a Pyrrhic victory. It was true that no one could technically prove the book wasn't written by Mark Twain, so Clara simply filed a new lawsuit. In this new lawsuit, Clara laid out an ultimatum for the authors. Their first option was to admit that they were frauds, remove Twain's name from the book, and try to sell the work on its own merit, of which there was none. The other option was to perpetuate the lie, but forfeit all profits from the book to Clara and her father's publisher, as they owned the exclusive rights to print all of Twain's work. The authors refused to back down on their claim that the book was dictated by Twain, but they agreed to destroy all existing copies of the book and cease publication, so the lawsuit was dropped. Some copies had already been sold which were not destroyed, and these are exceedingly rare collector's items. The cheapest versions I could find are in the $300 range. It's a piece of lie book.
I'd buy that for $1.
And those don't even have the dust jacket, which is the most coveted part of the book. This was a high-profile case, but it didn't stop other scam artists from also pretending the manuscripts were dictated by a Ouija board or medium from a famous author. Future con men just made sure their famed author of choice's works were in the public domain before trying to publish their tripe. Yes, public domain. It's why we have a Winnie the Pooh murder film, which is fantastic. I mean, I haven't seen it, but I love the idea, and I love stuff entering the public domain. Brilliant! Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
You a motherfucking ghost! I'ma whoop that ass! I'ma whoop that ass!